Hi everyone, thanks very much for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn. I run the services at and around MedCommsNetworking.com, which are designed to support the global MedComms community, by which I mean medical communications, medical publishing, medical education, people working in the business, people working around the business, people who want to come into the business. And if you haven't seen MedCommsNetworking.com, I'd like to just put a plug in and say go and have a look. Everything you need to know about MedComms should either be there or you're pointed at various other resources. What we're doing at the moment, running these Zoom meetings, it's a great way of involving more people. We can all be in different places talking, we can have an audience coming in from all over, and then the idea is to capture a recording, and the recordings are being posted on NetworkPharma TV, where you'll find now there's in excess of 200 videos of one sort or another, so there's quite a good resource building up there if you want to go and have a look at that later on. Today, absolutely delighted to have Sally and Edward and Sarah and Steph join us, talking about development of medical writers, careers, training, whatever. I'm not going to say any more. Basically, I'm going to hand over to Sally for a presentation. She's going to lead a presentation, and then at the end we'll have plenty of time for some Q&A. So as I say, please do get ready to send your questions in by either of those text boxes. So on that note, Sally, I'm going to hand over to you to lead us off with the presentation.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you very much to everyone for joining us. So hopefully you'll all be able to see the slides coming up now. Obviously do send a message if there's any issue with viewing the slides. So today I'm going to talk about training and nurturing expertise in medical writing. And if we just go on to the next slide, I'm delighted to sort of welcome the rest of the panel here. So we're all going to just briefly introduce ourselves. So myself, Sally Stringer, I'm the Executive Scientific Director at Healthcare 21, which is part of the Lucid Group. I oversee the team of writers and editors here, and joining me is Dr. Edward Rochford.
Everyone, so I'm the Anti-Infectives team lead here at Healthcare 21. And I guess I'm on the webinar today because I've been quite lucky, had quite a quick career progression, but also been involved a lot in coaching, mentoring, training programs, and bringing through new talent and trying to accelerate their way upwards.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. We are now. I'm Sarah Fogg, delighted to be here. So I spent over 20 years working in the pharmaceutical industry, and now I run my own learning and development consultancy, Truly Ready.
And I'm Stephanie Wasek. I have about 15 years of experience freelancing in one form or another. I've worked project-based, ad hoc, client-side, in-house with agencies, so I'm here for that total perspective, but also I have recently joined Healthcare 21 because for reasons that will probably become quite clear as we go through this webinar.
Thank you very much. So it's great to see you all here today, and I can see you can recognise a few names there from LinkedIn, and I know that a number of you are already in the sort of same areas as us, the sort of senior sort of writing professionals. You know, maybe you've come through as an in-house route, or perhaps you're a freelancer. I'm sure you're all absolutely excellent writers, which is the, you know, what it says on the tin. But what else do you do? You know, you're probably involved in strategy, whether you be in-house or whether you're a freelancer. But are you really getting to meet your other ambitions? Do you want to sort of be a team leader? Do you want to train others? Possibly if you're in an in-house position, you might be getting those opportunities, whereas potentially as a freelancer, is that a bit more difficult? Are people also recognising your scientific expertise? You know, you've probably come from doing a PhD or an MSc and have got a great deal of knowledge to share, but are people recognising you as that scientific guru? What do you need to reach the top, to reach your ambition? So that's sort of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to hand over to Edward for the next part.
Great, thank you, Sally. So I want to sort of present something today that might be quite obvious, but I think it's maybe sometimes missed, and it's something that we're certainly considering here at Healthcare 21. That is how to realise the pinnacle of a writer's career. This is sort of a simplified career development ladder where you become a novice writer, competent writer, project lead, team lead, client partner, but ultimately the greatest level of value that you can provide, and I would also argue the greatest amount of career satisfaction you can have, is becoming a strategic thought leader in your area. Now, being a strategic thought leader is quite a diverse and specialized skill set, and it's one that is maybe a little bit more diffuse than just being able to write correctly or identify different ways of communicating information. So you need to be a negotiator, you need to convince people of why they should change their behavior. You need to have big picture thinking, so thinking just beyond what the immediate project is you're working on and how that relates to the therapy area, maybe even between therapy areas. You've got to be an innovator, you've got to be trying to push things forward. You've also got to be an activist, a behaviorist, and a futurist. So it's got a lot of different skill sets that are required to really hit that level. And ultimately, when you do hit that level, it gives the greatest value to your client. So generally, your client's quite happy, and also your team. And I've got to say, it's very rewarding. I found myself with my current clients in quite a wonderful position with them. You get respect, recognition, and also you feel like you're making a real difference because you're actually driving something rather than just reacting to something. So if you break apart the sort of career development, working your way up through those rungs, what we typically find is that during the first few months of a medical writer's development, they're pumped full of training, pumped full of information. You then kind of reach this point where you're a competent writer, you're looking to become a project leader and a team leader, but typically it's easy to fall into an approach where it's reactive. So it's based on review rounds. So maybe once a year you look at where do you want to be, then identify what are your goals, you can work on your goals for 6 to 12 months, then you take the next step up, look at it again, and have another go again. And so it's not necessarily the quickest way to get to the top. And of course, if you're a freelancer, there's an added level of difficulty that Steph's going to discuss in a minute, which is that I'm sure that you're a wonderful writer and can lead projects, but not having that engagement can be quite difficult to sort of really jump up the ladder there. And so this is somewhat of a development gap. And I think it occurs quite a lot. It's definitely something worth thinking about. How can we accelerate up through that development gap and take sort of a proactive approach? And this really requires investment, so it requires energy to put in. It also requires intervention, so not just waiting for those yearly review rounds, having a targeted approach to it and identifying how to get up those rungs as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And the nice thing about this is even if you're quite far up on those rungs, it's also important to think about the people lower down and how you can accelerate them so that you can make space below you so that you can also move up again. So first of all, I'm going to hand over to Steph, who's going to give a bit of a freelancer perspective on this, and then we'll move across later on to some more details.
Thanks, Edward. Yeah, so I mean, the pros of freelance are much lauded. You know, the variety is amazing. It's never boring. The flexibility is built in at the beginning, and the day rates are strong. So, you know, we know that, but, you know, there are things dragging on that. And there's what I call the hustle, which is, you know, there's always work out there, but is the timing going to align with your skills and your personal needs? And there's just this continuous relationship management to keep up with. So you end up devoting a lot of time to client services skills, you know, keeping your friends, your contacts, recruiters close and happy. And, you know, and then building on that, admin can consume a lot of your spare time, or you have to pay somebody to free up your time. And, you know, the upside though, is that you gain skills in terms of resources, budgets, understanding how a business is run. And so even in those two downsides, you are getting a skill-based upside. But then that leads to, you know, there's still the tunnel vision. You know, we're highly motivated, and you know, we wouldn't be freelance if we weren't, but ongoing education can get deprioritized when you've got these other drains on your time, and especially when you've got a really full workload. And if you work long contracts, you know, this keeping up with your skill set can really start to get stagnant. And I fell into that feeling of stasis and actually went and enrolled in a master's degree program so I could be more flexible, add leadership skills, and just get ahead of the MedComms curve instead of catching up to it. I just finished after 2 years, and it was entirely worth it, but it was a time and expense and stress drain. And it kind of left me wondering, where is that support for higher level continuing development? Not just to do the work, which we're very good at, but to strategize and lead so that you can have a value added offering. And you don't have to be a manager to be a leader, because I often think about like how much knowledge is held by freelancers that isn't actively shared. We have these communication skills, we have client development skills, we understand financial and business needs, and we're keeping that in a silo, and early career medical writers are missing out on that knowledge. And even if you don't think that sharing is some sort of moral imperative, I do think that being able to do that and share is part of our development. So, it's equal parts support and sharing, and that makes you a more well-rounded writer overall in terms of just the delivery as well. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And, Sarah's done a lot of work around this and is better at talking about the training part of it. So I'm going to ask for her thoughts.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you very much. So absolutely. So Edward has talked about really broaching that gap and accelerating to get up those levels to becoming a more strategic thought leader. And we've talked about the development gaps. And actually, as a leader, if we look at all of our different skill sets and capabilities, what are the most important ones? And communication skills really are at the top of the list of those important skills that we need to be able to utilize in our communications. And I'll give you an example. So you may be someone who really likes to reflect. You might like to look at all of the data and have all of the knowledge before you make a decision. You may be working with a colleague or a client who actually is more of a driver. They make their decisions based on their gut instinct. And so how do you work together in harmony to make sure that you get the best out of those interactions to build that mutual trust and respect to ensure that you have that great relationship moving forward? Coupling then that with great influencing and negotiation techniques can really help you and your individuals around you, your colleagues, and also when you're dealing with your clients as well. And these aren't just skills that you can have individually. These are skills that you can develop as trainers to work with your colleagues to help bring them up through that career development. And actually, Steph, you just talked about we're all leaders. This is around leadership at every level. So what kind of leader are you today? What kind of leader do you aspire to be? And actually, what are the steps that you want to take to become that brilliant strategic thought leader that people look to with that respect? And underpinning all of this is coaching. So whether that's coaching on a one-to-one basis for you to accelerate your learning, or whether you then have the skills and tools to have coaching models that you can use with colleagues to get the best out of them. So if we move on to the next slide, actually, what enables this accelerated learning journey? So I've broken this down into 4 simple key steps. And these can be used whether they are for you as the individual wanting to develop your skill set, or actually whether you want to work with others in a training capacity. So it's about really identifying what those training needs are. Is it moving each colleague or yourself from that consultative to a more strategic level? Then it's developing those learning objectives, but these need to be individual and they need to be tailored to meet the needs of each individual. Is it a knowledge gap? Is it skill? Or is it attitude? And designing those programs to meet your needs and your colleagues' needs will help to facilitate that learning and to develop continuous development plans where you can set yourself goals and stretch objectives to accelerate your learning to really increase that curve. I'll hand back to Sally.
Thank you, Sarah. So I think there we've sort of really outlined well what you sort of really need to be this sort of thought leader within medical writing. So clearly, scientific and medical and communications expertise, and this being this great strategist. I think also to add to that, you know, Sarah was talking about with the, you know, training others and sharing that information, you need to be an influencer and a teacher. So whether that be for training sort of more junior team members or peers, or for interaction with your clients, that's also important. As we've talked about, we definitely think there's a development gap for many of the sort of senior sort of writers, particularly freelancers who may find it difficult to find their own routes, like Steph did, for developing beyond being an expert writer. And also, we're for the agencies, we're lacking on those skills that these freelancers are developing. So out there, you know, you're developing these great scientific skills that are not then getting passed on to something else. It's something that the Lucid Group have been thinking about a great deal, and we think we've got a bit of a solution for you. So we're just initiating the Lucid Scientific Centre of Excellence. The idea behind this is to really recognise senior writers as thought leaders, you know, who have excellent scientific, medical and strategic knowledge that can provide consultation and expertise. So we're starting a centre here where we're bringing in writers who are, you know, already quite senior, but will have the opportunity to sort of further themselves, to expand on that expertise. For example, you know, going to conferences in their therapeutic area, writing white papers and so forth, and really sort of developing that further. And also to train in the areas that Sarah was talking about, to become more of a leader, to develop further their strategy, and to be really part of an integral team within the Lucid Group. So helping out the different teams within Lucid with different programs of work as the need arises, reaching their own potential with a tailored learning program, but combining this with other advantages which are normally seen more from a freelance perspective, as Sarah was saying. So you're getting this variety of work, this agile working on different days. So we really wanted to see what you thought about this today, and obviously about all the other sort of areas that we've been speaking about today about this development gap. Do you think that that exists? And you know, what do you think about our ideas for our Centre of Excellence, and really recognising our thought leaders and putting them to good use? So thank you very much for listening, and we'd really appreciate some good questions and discussion about this. And thank you to all the panel for their great presentation.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Thank you all of you, and to the audience. Please, can I just once again say, if you'd like to ask some questions, it's sort of, you know, we can have a discussion here, but it would be much, much more useful if we can get some questions and observations and comments in from you. So at the bottom of your screen, you have a chat box, Q&A box. They'll each pull up a text box. You can text us in your questions and so on. Please do help join in with the Q&A. Well, I'd just like to sort of say a couple of things and maybe ask a question to begin with. Firstly, I'm personally thinking it's great at the moment, and it seems very obvious at the moment, but I guess it's been building for the last year or two, really, that companies within MedComms are doing so much more to develop staff, put in place training programs of one sort or another. And, you know, it's great that we've got you talking about yours, but let's acknowledge the fact that, you know, there are other companies who are developing academies or whatever programs. Some of them are very focused on bringing new people in. Some of them are all the way through. Some of them are writers, some of them are across. But I think, you know, I'd just like to just acknowledge, and there are other people on the line, I'm sure, you know, we could all pat ourselves on the back, really. MedComms has matured a lot, and as a business, and that comes with a number of benefits, including these sorts of these programs that are being implemented. So I think that's all good. And you know, there's been quite a lot of emphasis on the entry level, I guess, and maybe less emphasis on, well, what did we do once you're into the business? So I'm applauding these sorts of initiatives. And I'd love to know about more. So to the audience, whatever, you know, please tell me about other initiatives, and let's talk about how it works in practice. And what I'd like to do, just to cover it off, I don't want to get bogged down in it, but I think it's an obvious question to start us thinking. You know, what we're talking about here is very much the sort of the as you're into, and you've already said several times, actually, you're already a very good writer, the question. But can we just have 5 minutes looking at what happens at the beginning, and specifically within Lucid, that's fine. You know, what is the form of training for someone who comes in as an entry-level writer? Let's just run through it quickly so we get an awareness of where we're starting. Is that all right, Sally? Can you take that away?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a couple of different sort of routes for new writers. So within the Lucid Group, we have the Executives Programme, which is a programme for people who maybe haven't at that stage decided whether they're going to be writers or sort of more client-facing role. So people coming into that programme will sort of have some intense training initially, various sort of things around writing and around MedComms and so forth, regulations and about the Lucid Group. And then they'll move from that into having a position within the group, but if one position they'll have will be sort of account facing, sort of client facing position, and then they'll move to writing position. And so at the end of that period, so I think it's sort of most of the year is spent doing that. They then can sort of decide whether they're wanting a writing or a client-facing role. That's one of the routes, and obviously within the Lucid Group there are different sort of sub-agencies, and within Healthcare 21 we've also had a similar sort of programme, but we've sort of more definitively taken in either writers or accounts team members, and again a combination of sort of intense training but also a lot of on-the-job training, sort of trusting in people to do actual real jobs, you know, with support.
That's what I just want to get a bit more of the nitty gritty, and I don't want to get bogged down, as I say, but you know, you come in, you're talking about training writers. Well, what does that mean? Is it in-house? Is it on the job? Do you put them on courses? Is there, I mean, people have talked about, you know, academic programs for writing. We need an academic program for writing. There isn't really one. Just a couple of minutes, just, you know, what, and with the writing side into it, what you're actually teaching them, how you're teaching them, are there opportunities there or whatever? You see what I'm saying? Just a bit more nitty gritty.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk a bit more about the program that we've been running in Healthcare 21, which is being dovetailed into the whole Lucid Group, because as people are probably aware, Healthcare 21 joined the Lucid Group in September. So our own program, we sort of are focused on sort of 3 areas. So obviously MedComms sort of knowledge in terms of training people around the types of activities and styles of writing and target audiences for our different activities, whether that be sort of digital activities, publications, you know, like actual sort of workshops on what you would be doing if you know, really practical things. What would you be doing if you were at an ad board, you know, things about regulations, different therapy area knowledges. So we run sort of seminars and workshops and those sort of things, and even things like, you know, client interactions, your interactive workshops. But that's sort of run alongside on the job training. So I think that's absolutely critical. And I know Julianne, who is our Learning and Development Officer, she sort of recognises learning as being, I think it's about 80% should be on the job, but very much supported by their line manager, but also by a buddy as well. So they would be typically given sort of smaller pieces of work to start with that they can handle. I mean, you know, people are coming with a PhD, MSc background. They've got a lot of knowledge. They've got a lot of potential, and we like to sort of really recognise that people are able, and to sort of let them grow with that. So as soon as you can see they're doing well, you give them a bit more until, you know, they get the full picture of the full sort of job. Does that answer your question, Peter?
I'm still I don't want to get bogged down this, but you're not, but there isn't an academic program, there isn't a certification, there isn't something that someone can go, I can go on that course and I'm going to magically come in here, or there's nothing that you guys send them on that magically turns them into a writer.
No.
You're sort of saying it, on the job, in-house training, whatever, is the way it works, yeah? So at some point, you're now becoming established as a medical writer, just out of interest, and again, within the company, do you get to a certain point where they've ticked certain boxes and they're now a trained writer? And that dovetails into the question of where this program starts to take over, because is it a question of at a certain point they've done everything they need to, now they're part of this program? And do you see what I'm saying there?
I do see what you're saying. So our Scientific Centre of Excellence is sort of a separate sort of body compared to our in-house writers. It's not that it's good that everybody's going to move into that. We'll still have our in-house writing team. It's really sort of separate entity. But we'll also help train writers within the group as well. So in terms of when you become a writer, obviously it depends on sort of personal ability. You know, some people have more natural ability than others, it takes longer. Typically we find we start with trainees and then they move to associates. The sort of fastest to go that journey to be what's actually then a medical writer would take a year, but I wouldn't see them as an expert sort of writer, so to speak, until, you know, maybe they're reaching senior writer, which usually typically takes a few years. Yeah, I don't know whether you've got anything to add to that, Edward?
Yeah, I think kind of a key differentiation point here is that it is a separate entity. So let's say you get up to a senior medical writer level and you're thinking, right, I'm really liking what I'm doing. I want to get more training. The training would be provided by the sort of consultant people in the academy. Equally, if you get to senior medical writer level and think, you know, I want to fast track up to that sort of thought leader level. I want to have that flexibility of projects. Also, I'm really interested in training other people. Then the academy is definitely for you. So it's kind of that choice, and then the academy then feeds into supporting the rest of the company. So for those who don't want to do it, then absolutely all that resource is there. Absolutely all that speciality expertise is there, so you can harness that.
Okay, just keeping this a bit more general as well, rather than just about the centre of excellence. But you know, I'm not going to tease this out anymore. It's just like, you know, writers are presumably it's a lifelong thing, isn't it? You become better and better writers more and more you do, and all the rest of it. And you know, some people just want to write, and they don't want to manage, and they don't want to all this other stuff, which I guess is fine. What we're talking about are the people who want to get those other skills. Yeah, let's just bounce around some of the questions because they are coming in here. Okay, this is interesting. Okay, so let's just run through them very quickly. Sorry, I'm not thinking fast enough. But Sarah's talking about not wanting everyone to take their writing, not wanting to go beyond writing. So that's fine. That's a different point. About balancing. So one of the questions which I think we talked about the other day actually when we were talking about this, you know, you've got with any training, there's always a bit of a conflict, isn't there? Because if you're training anyone, they're not actually on the job charging themselves out or something like that. Yeah, just again, let's just talk a little bit around that. And maybe Sarah, I mean, you do training. You know, how often do you sit there with a room full of people who just don't want to be there because they want to be, they need to be out and the pressure's out to bill and all the rest of it. How do you manage that sort of conflict within organisations and within at an individual level? So does that give you something to talk about?
Sure, absolutely. So I think it's very rare that I would have a room full of people that feel the pressure that they shouldn't be there. No, but the reason I say that, Peter, is because you have development, professional personal development is something that you have to own. So your own personal development plan is yours. It's then agreed with your line manager, and I think it's around this permission for yourself to say, actually, I might not be out billing hours at the moment, but actually I'm spending time developing myself, meaning I'm going to be a little bit better tomorrow than I was today, and therefore that's going to have a greater impact on the business and me, because actually I'm learning and developing myself as well. So I think from a longevity perspective, actually developing yourself and the company that you're working for, seeing that benefit actually makes you much more well-rounded and develops your skills, so you're able to build more as you move forward. So I think it's about that permission for yourself.
Okay, so an obvious follow-up question: how are you measuring this, or how would you measure it in these scenarios where you're developing people like this? Can you measure it?
So there's a number of ways you can measure it. So it would be on their own personal goals that could be agreed with as an individual or with their manager. Maybe it's they want to develop into becoming a trainer. So it's about having individual programs. Now, there are training programs that are a broad brush and do fit all, but also it's around having that bespoke, tailored approach to each individual. So where is it they want to be in a year? Where do they want to be in 3 years? Where in 5 years? And setting those goals and having them very, very clear of how they're going to achieve them, and then the rest will follow. You write down your goals, you're more likely to achieve it.
Okay, but I'm going to put you on the spot, and the crunch question is, can the boss measure that this has a beneficial effect on the business bottom line?
Ultimately, if you're investing in your people and they're being able to bill more hours because of their better communication skills, better influencing and negotiation, I would say you would be able to see your return on investment.
Okay.
If I may add to that, Peter, I think it just depends on the type of training, which we really hope that we're going to nail this down, and it will be very tailored. And I think a key thing for me is, like, I'm probably pathologically ambitious. It might be a problem, but I've had some luck and I've had some skill. And the idea here is that by having this resolute training program throughout the whole thing, it takes a bit of that luck element out of it. It's not just being lucky that you've got someone, a manager who's really good and puts a lot of time into it. It's giving you that access to something where you can say, I want this, here it is, I can take it, I'm going to go for it.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'm still slightly intrigued as to what happens in any company about training and how you measure it and how you decide whether you've done what you need to do and those. Is it tied, for instance, with yearly reviews and things? I mean, there's got to be some element of that working together. Yes, Sarah, you're nodding your head.
Absolutely. So, you know, if someone is saying in their review with their line manager, you know, I'm wanting to develop, this is the next step, then that is that discussion to say, okay, well, what's going to get you there? And of course, this needs to be reviewed on a regular basis. Is it working for the individual? If it's not, is it a different approach? And is it working for the company as well? And ultimately, if you put time into your own development, you know, the fruits of your labour will follow. Okay,
and Jamie's just asking a question as well, just a little bit more of the nitty gritty again. So this sort of training that you're doing on whatever topic is on, what you know, what's it going to look like? Is it going to be sitting in a room listening to someone? Is it going to be online training? Again, is it going to be going to you know, courses or whatever, or is it going to be very what's the word? There's a word for it, isn't there? Sorry, it's gone completely. Sorry, I'm too old for this game. Blended learning. Blended learning was the word I was trying, which is often used as a term where, well, we can sort of do whatever counts, sort of thing, you know. And but what's some of the nitty gritty? What tactics are you putting in place to train people?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really sort of all of the above. So, you know, as we were saying before, we're in this Centre of Excellence, we're wanting to recognise the sort of expert writers as thought leaders. So we're wanting them to nurture their expertise in a therapy area. So that might involve, for example, going to a conference, you're writing articles. So that's, I suppose, sort of self-driven nurturing. Then also, you know, through our sort of Lucid learning and development program, we'll be offering a sort of range of courses, some of which is are online learning and some of which are workshops. And on top of that, you know, where there's the need, we will use external courses, but we do have a lot of in-house expertise and talent.
Okay, sorry, I think someone's just asked, I think you mentioned something about a Lucid Ladder. That's not a, what's that? I think you said something about a Lucid Ladder going.
I didn't actually say Lucid Ladder, but I said Lucid Learning. But interestingly,
oh, sorry, okay.
We do have, so it's funny because we do have something called Lucid Ladder, which is our in-house development program. So you might have heard that term before. And it's really about individuals, as Sarah was saying, recognising where they want to go, sort of, and Edward, and sort of planning that learning journey along with the support of our sort of learning team.
Okay, I've got you. Steph, sorry, bringing you into this. I mean, it's probably a big question actually around how freelancers get any learning at all, actually. But have you got a few observations on what they're actually doing out there at the moment? What were you doing as a freelancer to get learning?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's you, who, you know, like just the industry knowledge that comes through the email newsletters is so valuable, because that is part of like understanding the landscape. And then, you know,
oh, sorry, I see what you mean. Through MedComms networking. So I wasn't quite sure what you said there, but yeah, through MedComms networking, which is great. So thanks for the plug. Yeah. We do provide lots of information. Yeah, good. Yeah.
No, but that is, you know, you try to get a gauge on the landscape and where MedComms is going and what seems to be important and what kind of you know, what the topics of the webinars are, start to like kind of give, this is where the wind's blowing. And that stuff is important because, again, that's beyond the writing, that's understanding the landscape of the industry. I mean, you know, a lot of people join your EMWA, they join ISMAP, things like that. But
so I'm just going to cut across your story, Steph. I'm going to cut. EMWA is European Medical Writers Association. ISMAP is International Society of Public. I think we just need to spell out the words a little bit there. So EMWA is the European Medical Writers. ISMAP is Professional Publications Professional. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all very focused though on the writing side. So if you want to do something that's more leadership based or understanding behavior change and how you can implement that into your writing and into the programs you develop, you really have to look outside. And this, everybody's talking here a lot about taking the personal initiative and all of that. And I don't think by and large that people don't want that. I think a lot of it comes down to there's things in company cultures where, sometimes you feel like maybe they want you to do it, but the time isn't actually available in practice. And, I think that makes a big difference when somebody says there is an actual commitment to this. I mean, you're talking about measuring it, and maybe it's not in, somebody doesn't go 2% more billable hours next year, but what they do is they stay, and then you don't spend 30 grand trying to recruit and train and bring somebody else in, because there's a 6-month learning curve.
Yeah.
So, those kinds of things might be soft in terms of the way that you measure, but they are so important. That continuity is so important. And if you have targeted education and you have a culture that says this is important to us, then you don't end up in that thing where somebody is in a role for a long time and that continuity leads to stagnation.
Okay.
It leads to, continuing to develop and evolve.
Okay. Just as a general question, medical writing training, can you can't get a badge, can you, and go, I've got a certain amount of training, or with your centre of excellence or whatever it is, you're not giving. There's nothing really in the business that says I've got this, I'm therefore qualified at such and such level. In terms of moving around or something, if somebody knocks on your door, they can't put a badge in front of you and say I've got these qualifications. If someone goes through what you're doing, are they going to be able to put a badge on themselves and go, look, I've been through that program? What's the ambition there, and what's the situation there? Have you got a view on that side?
It is sort of a really interesting question, that, Peter, and sort of one that we're sort of still sort of thinking along those routes. I mean, I think the only thing that's open at the minute, there is some ISMAP courses. I think you can have become a DMPP sort of qualified person, but I think it's a very publication focused, where we do a lot of sort of MedComms that are quite sort of different and require different skills. I may have mentioned this to you before, we have been thinking whether, our Scientific Centre of Excellence, whether that could eventually be linked to some accreditation. I mean, as you probably know, I'm personally have an honorary position at the University of Manchester. There's a few routes we could explore here, but that's sort of maybe, let's sort of look at the next stage. Maybe we'll have another webinar if we get.
No, but there's quite. It's quite active. At times anyway, there's quite active discussion within the business about this sort of transferable skills between the agencies, the academic type qualifications, and so on. There's been various attempts at PG certs and communications MSCs and all that. So there isn't really very much of it around. We should, on that note, though. I mean, you mentioned ISMAP, the CMPP program, which I'm always very keen. Other people are very keen to say isn't about writing; it's about publications ethics and so on. Exactly. A little bit different, but it is there. EMWA, of course, have their certification program, which is very good if you can go through the conferences and the workshops and all the rest of it. And I know a lot of effort goes into those. So it's not that there isn't anything out there, but certainly as you get down to sort of specifically like this MedComms environment, there's not very much. And so it seems to me anyway, you're all, and as I say, applaud everybody, because there's a lot of focus in the last couple of years developing on doing this training, but it is a little bit about what you do within your own organisation. It's not very transferable, which I just think is an interesting debate, which we really haven't got time to go much further with today. Just to round off, because there has been a question which is worth I think it is worth in this context just rounding off with. The Centre of Excellence that you're doing and you're starting, and some of this is still to be evolved and so on. But where's it? How are you basing the people? I mean, I understand. Sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand you're basically building a team up in the northwest. Is that of the UK? Is that right? In around that?
So absolutely. So the hub of the team will be based where the Lucid Group Healthcare 21 offices are, which is near Macclesfield, so just sort of south of Manchester. However, we're anticipating that not all the people will actually be present there. It'll be very much sort of agile working and maybe some remote workers from other parts of the country. And we may expand that to include members of the centre being based in some of our other locations, which obviously includes London, but other parts of the world as well. So
Okay, cool. All right, but I think the accreditation type question is a really an interesting one for the future, sort of thing. So, as you say, maybe we'll come back and talk about that in the future. Just for the moment, I've got one eye on the clock, and we're running away with time again. So, I'm going to call a halt to this this part of the recorded. This part of the session, which is recorded, if that's okay with everybody, yeah. And just say to everybody who's listening to us at the moment, or will ultimately be listening to the video, all you guys are happy for them to reach out on LinkedIn, make contacts and so on, so please do. The video, assuming this is going to happen on video, which there's no reason why it shouldn't, will be on NetworkPharma TV along with another couple of hundred videos, so do go and have a look at the videos if you want to catch up on it. And just at the moment, we're running these webinars frequently every Wednesday, most Wednesdays, so come and join in again. Look at MedComsNetworking.com to catch up on what's going on. But I think what I like about these webinars is, we have a little bit of time to throw some ideas around, to hear what people are doing, to get an idea of what different people in different places are doing, and hopefully people will go away with some food for thought. And I think there's some interesting food for thought in there. So thank you very much, everybody. What I do these days is always ask people to give a little wave as I stop the recording. So at this point we go, thank you very much, and wave.
Thank you.